Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome back to a new video for today. Just wanted to hop in here and share with you guys that today is actually going to be a special video. We're going to be sharing a Patreon exclusive video here on the YouTube channel. I thought it would be great to show you guys kind of what we've been working on and also kind of what you'd get if you became a patron as well. Thank you so much to everyone who has become a patron thus far. I've been having a lot of fun, honestly, making videos for that platform. Really in-depth videos covering a lot of different kinds of topics, including creative business, breaking down camera gear, and overall just kind of creative business and life topics. So if you guys are interested at all, definitely check out the link in the description to become a patron. And for now, enjoy the video. Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome back to another Patreon episode for this month. Today we're diving into a topic that actually a few of you guys requested, and that is kind of some thoughts and some notes on composition. Now, I've definitely refined my composition over the years. It's something that I don't really think comes necessarily super natural to any photographer. I think it's something that you learn over time. So I'm going to try to do my best today to kind of explain the composition behind some of the images off of my portfolio website, which I figured are some of the best images that I've taken. And I feel like that'd be probably the best way to go about this. It's pretty hard to put into words sometimes how to compose something, but I'm going to kind of just speak candidly and walk you guys through what I was thinking when I was taking each of these images. So hopefully that provides some backstory and some context, as well as some good information on how you guys can go about composing your images as well. If you guys have any questions, definitely just leave a comment. I definitely see every single one of the comments here on Patreon. It's a lot easier to keep up with you guys. But if you have any questions, keep me posted. Let me know down in the comments. Happy to walk you guys through anything. So let's go ahead and dive in here. All right, so the first image that I have here, this was taken a couple of years ago, actually, when I moved to LA. Photo of my friend Aaron, who's a surfer. And I want to kind of go ahead and just kind of mark this image up and show you guys what I'm looking at here. So first things first, you'll probably notice the shadow right here. Now, the shadow is a key component of this image. I thought that it was really interesting because the light was so harsh already that it would create a really long shadow. And I wanted to frame this not necessarily right in the center of the image, but I wanted it to kind of line up right here with the water line of the ocean right here. So as you can see, we have this line right here, which goes along the ocean. And then, we also have the shadow of her right here. And that to me is really interesting. She's walking away from these rocks back here, which provides some context. We got a little bit of the ocean right here, kind of just outlining this whole image. So here we have kind of background, we have subject, and then we also have a lot of negative space right here. Now let me go ahead and erase all of this so we can kind of talk about negative space. Okay, so when it comes to negative space, you'll see that we have quite a bit to work with right here. And negative space is something that I definitely kind of put into practice in a lot of my images. As you can see over here, though, we have tons of it. And what it's doing is drawing you to the actual subject. I love using negative space in my images. I really think it kind of makes the image less busy. I think a lot of people try to include too much in their images. And what I love about this image in particular is how simple it is. And the more that you can look into, this kind of stuff and incorporate these kinds of components into your images, for me, negative space is just like a great way to, and be able to incorporate a lot of different elements into your photo, all while keeping it pretty simple as well. So again, real quick, we have, the shadow here. She's walking away, a nice long shadow, so it's really interesting. We have her walking along the line of the ocean right here, and that is really interesting because it's kind of dividing the image in half. We also have the negative space over here, and then we also have, finally, the ocean back here with the rocks. So overall, really happy with this image. All right, so next here we have a personal favorite image of mine. This was taken a while ago up in Malibu, shooting with this girl, Amanda. And I shot this through this Volkswagen bus that we were shooting with, actually. And what I love about this, first and foremost, is definitely going to be the framing of this image. As you can see here, we have the natural framing of the window of the car. I love using this kind of stuff for, kind of a natural frame to, a landscape or a person. And I had her stand right here just to make sure that she was actually in the frame. And, the bottom of the bus right here wasn't cutting off too much of her. So she took quite a few steps back. She's probably like 4 or 5 feet right here from the actual car. And I wanted to frame her up in the center of this right here. And I wanted to make sure that I got enough of her in the frame. Obviously, you can see a lot of her leg is not in the frame. And that's okay. Honestly, if I would have reshot it, I might have shot it slightly differently. But I did shoot this fairly compressed as well. I think this was about 50 millimeters. And I really like how this turned out. I really want to emphasize here how important this light and this detail is on actual car seat right here. And the reason being is because it's a beautiful car seat. It has this really cool, like, kind of flannel textured pattern. And the fact that it's actually exposed properly really kind of brings a lot into the image. You're going to notice that it's not necessarily the first thing that you look at. You obviously are looking at the subject first and foremost, but after that, you're looking at the actual car seat here and how that looks. It looks really nice. And I intentionally did that. I really wanted to have some detail in the car, so I exposed it in a way that made sense. But compositionally, this image is fairly simple. I just wanted to frame her up with the actual car, and I really love how it turned out. All right, so next here we have actually a photo that I took for this clothing brand called Vince. They're based here in Los Angeles. They're a pretty high-end luxury men's clothing brand, and they commissioned me to shoot some photos of one of my friends, actually, who's a woodworker. And we actually had this really cool car that we shot with, which is a vintage Mercedes. Obviously, you guys will see a common theme throughout this. I love shooting with cars. Cars are just really fun to mess around with. They have really nice lines, and they make compositions like this a little bit easier for sure. So as you can see here, this is a pretty cropped in shot of him kind of just looking down to himself. Actually, his dog was out of frame, and that's the reason he was looking down. But I really like how soft and kind of candid this feels. But you'll notice first and foremost how cropped this image is, right? Like, you'll notice kind of this, like, the cropping here on the corners. And the reason for that is I really wanted this to be a kind of a cropped in shot. I think I shot this probably at 85 millimeters if I had to guess. As you can see, you can't really see anything in the background. I didn't really care about that too much. One thing that I don't love about this actual image is right here. And it's almost touching his face, kind of this corner of the car. It's not quite touching, and frankly, I really like the image, and I wanted to keep it in my portfolio anyways because I just like how natural it feels. But I don't love this. If I were to redo this, I probably would have changed that slightly on the composition. But I do love how his head here just kind of fits in this negative space. That's something that's really important. You don't want it to be too busy, especially when you're taking a portrait of somebody. You want to be able to kind of, see the whole scene and make sure that, nothing is kind of going on in front or behind of the subject that's going to distract the viewer from the final image. Other than that, though, a fairly simple composition. You guys are going to probably notice that throughout this. I really just focus on natural framing, and I really also love to put a good emphasis on make sure I capture the subject, the way that they were intended to be captured. And, for example, here we have a really nice contrast here between the white shirt and also his Sherpa jacket, and then we also have these tan leather seats behind. Now, obviously, this is a black and white image, but color still does have a lot to do with it when it comes to black and white. So pretty happy with how all this turned out. I really like the image overall. As I said, if I were to redo anything, it would definitely be this. I'd like to redo that and make it not so close to him. But other than that, looks great. Pretty happy with that. All right, so here is a personal favorite image of mine. This was taken in Venice with my friend Leif and his girlfriend Laura. I rented this place to shoot with, actually. It's a really cool, like, Venice bungalow in the canals. And we wanted to shoot some kind of cool at-home photos. I had them kind of stripped down for the most part and just to some underwear and T-shirts, and we just kind of shot around the house. And what I wanted to kind of portray with these images is just kind of a natural feel of being at home. And a lot of my friends don't really have like a beautiful place to shoot in, so I try to find places to shoot in that feel lived in, and this is a great example. As you guys can see here, I'm going to change this to black just so you can see. As you guys can see here, this room feels very lived in. You have the plants here, you have like string lights right here, you have tapestries on the wall, really beautiful light coming in from the back. And I wanted to shoot this with a little bit of perspective. And what you'll notice here is that the walls are kind of framing the image. We got one right here, and we got one right here. And you also have some kind of random bookshelf back there. And what that's doing is it's providing a lot of perspective to the image. It's allowing the viewer to kind of be immersed in the image without it feeling like I'm on top of them. It's shot much farther back, and I like that because it doesn't feel in your face. It feels like the moment is happening and I'm taking a picture of it rather than, I'm creating the moment. And that's a pretty big distinction. And really the reason that it feels that way is because of this right here, how I composed it, how I added some foreground elements into it. And overall, it just makes the image feel much more natural, much more candid. And that's something I definitely try to focus on a lot, especially when I'm shooting inside. Adding some sort of foreground element, whether it's a door or a bookshelf, something you're shooting through, oftentimes it gives much more of a natural feel rather than, being right up close next to somebody. So that's a big reason of why I think this photo feels the way that it does. But overall, I really do like this image. And I love also the wood floor down here. I think that really adds a lot. But yeah, I think it's really important to note that really it's the foreground here that actually sells the image, not actually the background or the subject of the image. the foreground actually brings the viewer in from all different angles, this way and this way. It also, from the floor here, brings the viewer in this way. And overall, I just think it looks really nice. I think that's a great way to compose an image, especially when you're shooting inside. All right, so now we're breaking down one of my favorite images that I've taken as of late. This is a photo that I shot for Aston Martin back in the day, and back in the day meaning a couple months ago. Really happy with how this turned out, and I want to kind of dive in and explain to you guys why I love this image so much. Now, first and foremost, you're going to notice that I wanted to emphasize the tail light here. And really, this image is just a kind of mix of nice negative space up here, negative space down here, and I wanted a nice clean shot of the tail light. And I just felt like I hadn't really seen that before, and that was one of the first things that I noticed when I got the car was how nice the back of the car looked. And I really wanted to make sure that I was able to emphasize that. So you can probably notice here as well, along with the negative space, there's a lot of lines that are going on in this image. We're going right here, going right here, 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 all over, right? And what these lines are doing is they're kind of drawing you in, and also in tandem with this negative space up here and the negative space down here, it just gives like a really nice clean look to the image. And a lot of times when you're shooting cars, you want the image to be as clean as possible. Really happy with how kind of this image came together. It was a really cloudy day, so that's why there's so much negative just gray space up here, and I thought it turned out really nice. Honestly, I was able to actually use this kind of dark gray light to my advantage and get a really clean shot of the tail light. Now you also notice how dark it is on the bottom of the image, and I intentionally did that because I really wanted to, again, emphasize this taillight right here. I wouldn't necessarily say this has anything to do with composition, but I did think that it was important to note. You can see the kind of subtle blues and purples in here of the car, and yeah, I think all of this, really the goal of this image compositionally was to emphasize this tail light as much as possible, and I think we did that. As you look at this image, this draws you in, this draws you in, the lines from this car right here, and also right here. You really start to look at that taillight first and foremost. And, as someone who maybe wants to purchase this image or use this image for Aston Martin, on social channels and on web, they're going to be looking at something like this and say, wow, you can actually showcase a very simple component of our car and make it look very elegant. And that's really what I was going for with this image. Okay, so next here I have a photo of my friend Leif, quick little portrait that we shot. We were shooting for Audi, and turned out really nice. As you can see here, we do have some foreground elements, including the mirror right here, which is really kind of drawing the viewer in and giving you kind of almost less to look at in a good way. We also have up here more of the car, and we got these nice natural lines that I really think only cars can provide. And I love shooting portraits inside cars. I think it's really fun, and it really kind of honestly is very flattering for the person that's getting their photo taken. Here with Leif, obviously we have an amazing jawline to work with. That definitely helps. But I really wanted to make this as clean as possible. I went for almost like a kind of black and white sepia look to this, kind of a warmer black and white. But also I think what makes this photo really interesting is how dark everything is in the background right here. And it's really just kind of naturally lighting him. I remember this being a pretty dark and rainy day. So there's not a lot of natural light to really work with in this image. But I did, however, really want this to be, lit properly. So I obviously wanted to make sure that his face looked good. We turned it towards a building. We got some light reflecting onto him. Super simple, but I think it turned out really nice. And yeah, as you can see, again, negative space is a huge component with this image, as are natural lines, natural framing from a car through the window. We got the mirror right here. We have more negative space. And overall, really happy with how this image turned out. All right, so here I have a photo that I took for Blundstone a couple years ago. Blundstone is a shoe company, and we were shooting at this cabin. I knew I wanted to get something unique, some sort of product shot that I hadn't seen before. And I noticed all of the people that I was shooting, they kind of had their feet just kind of laying on the table. And I noticed that if I were to get up high, I would get a different perspective. Now you'll notice that this is shot pretty much straight up and down. No, I wasn't on a ladder. Actually, I was up in the loft, and I was able to shoot over the loft down back into the living room and get this really cool image. Now you'll notice it provides a really cool perspective. It doesn't, feel like something that you would typically get. But compositionally, I really wanted all the shoes to kind of be in the same area right here. I found that was really important, but I wanted them to be kind of different in terms of, the way that they were placed. So here you have a shoe completely facing to the side. We have a shoe down here on the floor. We have another shoe to the side here. We have a shoe just kind of barely on the table. And then the same thing goes for down here. And what that does is you have a variety of different poses with the different shoes. And it kind of just, gives a bit of variety to the image. You're able to showcase multiple different products in different colors, different kinds of leather, and I think it turned out really nice. The thing that I want to also make note of here is the actual angle that I shot this on. So I obviously shot this pretty much straight up and down, about 90 degrees, and I felt that that was really important to include in this. You'll notice that the ground feels flat. It feels like, you're just staring right down at it. You're not at an angle whatsoever. And I did adjust this in Lightroom. There's a really quick and easy way to adjust this. You can adjust the X and Y axis. It's called the Transform tool at the very bottom of the Develop tab. Now, that helps a lot, especially with an image like this, so you can make it actually straight up and down instead of on an angle. But yeah, I do think that was also a very important component of this image. Here I have a portrait of my friend Jacob. This turned out really nice. This was 2 or 3 years ago at least, probably. But I wanted to shoot some cool photos of him surfing. And he had just gotten out of the water. It was a really warm summer day down in San Diego, so you don't really need to wear much. And I wanted to get this cool portrait of him with his surfboard kind of framing him. And you'll notice kind of the natural reflection right here of his face. And I wanted to cover a little bit of his face and also kind of use it as a way to draw the viewer in. This is a really natural way to kind of just bring some more framing into the image. And you'll notice with this face right here, it kind of just draws you in this way. And that's what I was kind of going for. Also with the board here, as you can see, we have a nice clean line right here. It's also drawing you this way. And everything in this image, I want to draw the viewer to the right, which is where, his face is. And the more that I'm able to do that, it just feels a lot more natural. And I like the natural framing of the surfboard here, as you can see, which is just like right there. There was a right and wrong way to do this, I think, in this scenario. I could have made the surfboard more in front of his face or a bigger part of the picture, but I really wanted it to just kind of draw the viewer in and get the viewer interested, and then have that attention directed to the actual subject and his face. So overall, I think I nailed this composition. I was pretty happy with this one. Okay, so here is a shot I actually took of my friend Dallin's. He has this really cool old vintage Saab, and we took it up to Topanga Canyon, which is here in California, and I shot this really cool photo of the interior of the car. It has this really cool combination of the yellows right here with the kind of dark brown colors on the seats, and I wanted to kind of emphasize that. We have some green back here in the background. I will say first and foremost, I wish I would have framed this slightly better. I don't love kind of the ski rack up here. I should have framed it a little bit better. Other than that, though, I do like the way that this was composed. I just wanted to admit that I think I could have done a better job in the moment. You'll see here that this kind of interesting little triangle of light, I think that's actually a lot more important than you might think it is. And the reason being is I really do like how it kind of is like a frame within a frame almost. You have this kind of natural framing of the car window. Again, really nice to be able to use that to our advantage. We have a nice little triangle right here, and we also have the triangle of light on the seat as well. So we have all these different kinds of shapes and also different colors. As I mentioned, we have the kind of nice soft yellow color of the car. We have the brown interior. We also have the green here in the background. And what that all does is it combines to make a really interesting and unique image, especially when you're shooting a detail. I think it's really important to kind of find these frames within a frame. And what I mean by that is just like framing something within something else. And oftentimes that results in a really unique and interesting image. Here, as you can see, if we would have cropped this out, I think it would have been a better image. I should have just shot this a little bit more tight, so maybe a 200 mil instead of like a 70 mil. But other than that, I really am pretty happy with this. I do love the combination of the colors and the different kinds of compositions within the actual picture itself. And turned out pretty nice. Again, though, I think I could have definitely done a better job. And I think that's important to note as well. Sometimes you just don't really nail the composition, and that's okay. All right, the final image here I have is a photo I took of my friend Zach. He's a great cyclist, and we wanted to go shoot some photos around downtown Los Angeles. This was probably 6 months ago or so. And this has a lot of really great lines to work with here. I really do love the image that we're working with here. So I want to just kind of walk you guys through it. So the lines here are really important. Obviously, we got lines here, we got lines here, we got lines here, all over. And this kind of parking structure, I really wanted to shoot with because it has really nice lines to work with. And what these lines do is it just kind of emphasizes the subject even a little bit more. Not only do we have horizontal and vertical lines, we also have kind of diagonal lines here. Here are the horizontal lines on the steps. Vertical here, we have horizontal. We have kind of skewed lines as well. And what it does is just makes this photo really interesting. It draws you in. It makes the viewing experience a bit better because you have all these things kind of drawing you into the view of the image. And, besides the fact that he is holding a bike, this is great because you can apply this to, shooting products, shooting different kinds of jobs, and, different kinds of really anything. Like the fact that you can use natural lines to kind of bring the viewer in and make it an interesting photograph, you're able to kind of draw attention to the subject or whatever you're shooting, whether it's for work or for personal reasons. This is something that I really try to focus on and hit home with my images. Now, another thing that I think is really important to note here is the color of the image. I want to do a whole video dedicated to color. Honestly, I think it'd be really important and great for you guys to understand how I work with color and why I find color so important, because I could have taken just as much time to explain color as I did composition just now. But the color here I think is really important as well. Not only the color of his skin, what he's wearing on top, on bottom, shoes here, we have the bike, we have the helmet and the glasses. It's all working together to deliver a better image, as a final product. And I think it's really important to remember all of this, not only for composition reasons, but I think, the more that you can focus in on color as well, it's really important. Again, I'll make a separate video about that. But compositionally speaking, I'm really happy with how this image turned out. The only thing I wouldn't really say that I did a great job at is this right here. I could have definitely done a better job framing kind of the bike handlebar right here. But other than that, pretty happy with how it turned out. I think overall, the natural lines, the leading lines in this made the image come together really nicely. All right, so that kind of concludes today's chat on composition. Hopefully you guys found something, valuable or enjoyable about this. I want to do more videos like this, especially with images that I take on a more recent basis. A lot of these were taken in the past. It'd be cool to do this with images that I've taken recently. So let me know if you want to do more kind of deep dives like this into images that I've taken, why I like them, and kind of how I shot them, kind of more of a behind the scenes approach. But yeah, thank you so much guys for continuing the support here on Patreon. It really means a lot. I'm really excited to continue with the regular uploads. So if you have any suggestions for upcoming videos, we're definitely taking any sort of requests right now. We're kind of in its infancy of this Patreon platform. So I'm really excited to explore it and see what we can do in the future. Thanks so much guys for watching, and take care. We will see you next week here on Patreon. Peace.